that works, that would
It'd
work.
been worth a try.
That would have worked on a Rambler or a small.
Are you going again?
Yeah, we're going again.
So anyway,
Yeah.
So they had
these
two or three
men
fan
pulled
belts.
out 3 old fan belts from behind their seat in the pickup. There was a boy with them and 2 men, and they walked over with us to the car. And none of the fan belts fit exactly, but one of them was close enough that if we took you have a bolt that swivels, you've got a
Tension
pulley
Tension.
on there that, what do you call it? A
Tension pulley.
tension pulley. But it has 2 bolts that could go in there to anchor it. And we couldn't make it take both those bolts, but we could take one of them, and still be tight enough for that belt to work on there. And so we thanked them because the weld looked good enough that we knew we could get to Swaco on it. And so we offered to pay them, and they didn't want any money. They said, no, that's all right. We're glad we could help.
We guess
or
that's
whatever
what
your
they
step
said.
was. And so I said, well, tell them that we want to give them some money to buy some more fan belts so that they can help other people. They'll have other fan belts in there. I think we finally got them to take 30 pesos or something like that, which was $5 or $6.
$2.40.
Even that much. And, but anyway, they didn't even want to do that. They just were glad they could help us. Well, we drove on to Swaco, bought a fan belt, but I decided I'm not going to get my hands all dirty putting it on there. This one's working fine. Came clear home from there. Drove that car probably another month or 2, still with that belt working fine. Then finally one day I changed the oil and I'm working in there anyway. And so I put the new fan belt on there. But here that fan belt just probably would have lasted another year. But those were the 3 Nephites out there in the desert, waiting for somebody to come along that they could help.
What's the next story?
The poor Nephites couldn't speak English.
On it. Give away their secret.
They didn't
I
speak
understand
English. They
Some-
only spoke
some
Spanish.
of
Oh,
them-
and Susan wanted to know the manure fire at Crufts.
Fire department at Crufts.
Oh, well, it was a hay fire really, but some manure in there, I guess.
Whoa.
Well, we'd had a fire
Makes the
call. I was
story more
working at
exciting.
24th Street in Roosevelt, and I was captain at that time, and we got the call to go out to Crufts Dairy, which is about 42nd Street, I think it was, and
McDowell.
McDowell. And so we head out there. Now, we'd taken milk from Crufts for years and years. We'd had them home deliver milk to us. So anyway, we get out there, and here's this hay and some manure in there burning, and it's really just, not a danger to anything, but just a nuisance, all the smoke and baloney there. So we go to work on it. Well, it's pretty hard to put those fires out, because you have to shoot that stream and drill into there to get back under there and get all that out. You have to get pitchforks and move stuff around, but we finally got it all put out after about an hour and a half, 2 hours. We had it to where we figured it's not going to start up again. Now, we're getting our hose back together, stuff back together, and load on the truck. And one of the guys from the other truck, there's another truck there with us, he pulls his hose up, pulls his nozzle open, and the water sprayed on us. Oh, excuse me, that I didn't know there was pressure in there. No, we didn't buy that, because the fireman knows. So certain things firemen don't know, but there's certain things they do all know. And so I said, okay. So now one of them's doing something down there with a roll of hose, and I walk over there with a bucket of water and I just dump it on his head. So it goes all over.
Meanwhile, the fire's still burning.
And I said, now we're even. Well, now it really starts to simmer. Now nobody's mad, they're just tit for tat kind of thing. And so we're getting ready now, we've got everything ready to pull out. And I'm supposed to pull out on McDowell and go west. They were pulling out to go east, because their station. was farther, was farther out east. I'm pulling out to go back to 24th Street. Only when we pulled out, I didn't go west, I went east right behind them. Oh, they did something else. As we went to turn, we got out there and they went to turn, they threw something back at us, not something to break us, but something to mess us up, get something dirty in the truck or something. And so I just said, right turn to the driver, follow him. So we follow him right up to 44th Street, and there's a signal light, and they have to stop. And when they stop, I have to reach over and pull the red line up, tell the driver, jump out and put this thing in gear, put the pump in gear. And he jumps out and puts it in gear. Now they can't go because they have a red light in front of them. And I just stood up and I just opened that thing and I just drenched that truck and those guys. But it was a Sunday afternoon and there wasn't much traffic out there. We'd probably been reported to somebody. But I just drowned them, everything. They were just doing this, trying to keep them getting squirted, and we were giving them like 50 pounds of pressure all over their windshield, the seats, everything. Finally, the light changed, and he gunned it and got out of there. And so then we made a right turn and went back south then and back over to Van Buren, came back on Van Buren and back up to the fire station. Well, I fully expected to hear something from somebody downtown saying, what were you guys doing out there? But I never heard a word from anybody about it. But those guys were telling that everywhere. Don't get Harris upset at you because he'll drown you.
He's a poor loser. Brad wanted you to tell about the fire truck and the tiller, when you were tillering.
Driving the boat.
Yeah. Well, we had the ladder truck number 2.
It was in the middle of the night, early morning.
Yeah, we had ladder truck that the ladder reached 85 feet in the air. And then they bought a newer one, still a newer one, that went 100 feet in the air. So they had it down at number 1 station. I had just made driver not too long before, and I was sent to number 4 station to tiller the other ladder truck, the 85-foot one. And so when we got there, it was up to the captain as to whether you drove the front of the truck or drove the tiller. The captain you're working for had the choice of assigning you. Well, Kimbrough had a captain that he'd played cards with a lot and liked, and Kimbrough's a good man. He was an infantry officer in World War II, and a nice guy. But that captain liked him real well, so every time that captain worked, which was half the shift, so we changed back and forth, why Kimbrough always drove in front of the truck, and I was on the tiller. But then when I would work with the other captain, he'd put me on the front of the truck and the other guy tiller. and you'd really rather be on the front of the truck, because when you get to a fire and you have to use that ladder, the tillerman has to go up, be the guy that goes up that ladder and does whatever has to be done up there. The driver who's driving the front of the truck, he's just there operating the hydraulics to raise the ladder and put it where it goes. And he's not climbing up there and doing it. And that's a preferable job, is operating that thing. So, anyway, I was on the back of it, and we got its fire call at 1 o'clock in the morning or real late in the night. And so we go out and we go over to 3rd Street and down, and in fact 3rd and 4th wasn't one way then like it is now. And swing over to 4th at Roosevelt and go down, and here we can see smoke pouring out of this apartment, and it's a house, and on the back is a little apartment and smoke coming out there. So I'm on the back, so I have to, of course, go in the fire with the captain. And Kimbrough, he's sitting out there on the truck, so he didn't have to go in the smoke or anything. So we get inside, and here's this woman, maybe 25, 30 years old, or 35, who knows. I couldn't tell by the way she's dressed because she didn't have any clothes on. She had gone to bed smoking and set the bed on fire. And so she gets out of the bed, it hadn't burned her, but she gets out of the bed, and about the time we get there, she's coming out the door and she didn't have anything on, stark
Nothing?
naked.
Oh.
And so the other captain on the other rig that had come from #1 station, he grabs this sheet and puts it around her. Well, that's a good idea, except that we look
On
down, the
fire.
sheet's on fire. Burning up here, burning at the bottom, and so one of the other
Here,
guys,
let me pat that
one of the
out.
other guys grabs the sheet and pulls it off of her because it's gonna burn her. I mean, it was just talk about a comedy of errors, that's what it was. Well, then one of the guys pulls his coat off, turnout coat, his firefighting coat, and puts it on her. Well, she's about 2/3 drunk, besides all the rest. So
Was
we
she
get,
Coyote ugly?
yeah. Well, no, she wasn't that bad, I don't know. I didn't notice her face.
It's been a lot of years.
Too busy looking at the
Yeah.
That's right.
I didn't see her face, I just threw that in as a joke. Like the guy says.
When there's
this-
that much skin, the face is not the first thing.
Yeah, this says this naked woman came in and robbed the bank and nobody could identify her face. But anyway, that's when we get everything squared away, the fire's all out, everybody's taking care of her, got some clothes on her and that. Now, we get on the truck and we head back to the fire station. Well, it just got started and I thought, you know, this is really kind of boring and kind of dull.
No
I mean,
traffic.
So I'm gonna do something that'll be exciting. So I turn that wheel clear over this way, and of course what it does is takes the back of the truck out like this, because it's a semi, pulls it right out here, and pulled right up till it was exactly a right angle. Here's the captain and the driver right here, and here's me right out here, instead of back here where I'm supposed to be. And I'm just driving, going right along beside them. And this trailer's, the trailer, the back part's just going right along this way. And the captain looks over and he sees it, and he stands up in the seat, back there, get back there. Where you belong. So I got back there. We got back to the station, and he says, "You think that's pretty funny, don't you?" And I said, "I know that was pretty funny." And he said, "Well, it was kind of funny, but don't do it any time when anybody's going to see us or we'll get in trouble." But that's what that was about. It's just so weird to just be able to turn that wheel and you just bring that trailer out and you just go along this way. It's sticking straight
Sideways
up
to
the
it.
side. Of course, you have to have a fairly wide street to do that on. But now I notice these new trucks, they're only like four-wheelers. Well, they probably have two sets of duals on the back. But their ladder is no trailer on there like we used to have. That thing raises up and it's about 4 or 5 sections that'll raise way up there.
The hydraulics are
100
much
feet.
stronger now. You just-
Yeah, so they don't need a Tellerman on the back.
Susan wanted to know when you almost hanged.
When I almost,
Hung yourself.
oh, well, Tom and I were playing around. We were probably freshmen, sophomore in high school.
Do we need Tom's permission to tell this story?
And
Sign a
we
release.
thought it'd be funny to get a picture of one of us like we're being hung, we're hanging. And so we get this rope.
Is that the
Tom?
picture? Is that the picture we have?
Yeah,
Of
Tom
you-
wasn't there.
Yes, he
Ann
was.
and I were there.
Tom was there.
Anyway.
He got me down. But what I did was I put this rope under my arms, round me under my arms, but then had it come up beside my head. But then I had another piece of rope that went around that looked like this was a noose on my neck. So then we pulled me up got up on a stool out there in the backyard on the farm down there, and tied it onto the limb on the cottonwood tree. And then I kind of let down and lift my feet up a little, and I said, okay, so he took the stool out. Then he's going to take the picture of me hanging there. But what happened was this rope slipped enough that it really started strangling me. It was just really tight around my neck. And I was trying to say, hurry, get the picture, hurry, hurry. I'm choking. So he gets the picture, and then he always gets the stool under me before I did choke. Got me down. We never tried that stunt again. I didn't want any pictures, because the next one I might really be dead.
It wasn't as funny as we thought it was going to be.
You wanna hear my version of it, you know? It's completely.
I had another fireman one. Well, wasn't there?
Well, I was just gonna say, how does that compare to the story of somebody getting something dumped on them in a well and wearing the big galoshes?
Oh, that was a Rand. Asked about
Something dumped on him.
that. Yeah, wasn't Tom digging the well and you dumped something on his head? and
No,
then
I
he came
just said
chasing?
something to him.
Oh, well, give us the story. We didn't
Well,
know the
he was
story. I'd never
working,
heard
well,
it.
we took turns down there digging. He'd lower me down, and I'd dig for a while, and then he'd pull me up, and of course he's pulling the dirt up between times. I'm filling this 5-gallon bucket of sand and gravel and stuff, because the water level, the table would vary depending on how much rain they'd had and how much water was coming down the river bottom down there. And so sometimes you'd have a lot of rain, well, you'd have 6 feet of water down in there. Other times you wouldn't have much to go dry. Whenever it went dry, you got down in there and dug till you got down as far as you could and not without your face underwater. So you're going this way and digging this stuff out. Had this little shovel thing. And then that's as far as you could go, because you couldn't stick your head underwater. And so it's only the length of your arm is as deep as you can get it down. And so we do that and pull that dirt up. Well, then Tom happened to be down in there, and I'm pulling the dirt up. And so Grandma came out of the, not this grandma, my mother, came out of the house and came around there to see how we were doing. And she sat down in the swing right there at the end of the house. Now, the well is right here. Here's the house right next to it. The house corner back here. And here's the trees and the swing right there. You can't see around to the well from the seat, but it's just around the corner there. So I'm sitting there in the swing talking to Mother. And Tom gets the bucket full, and he's calling, take it up, and nobody's up there to take it up. And so he keeps hollering, and so finally I heard something, and so I went around there, and he said, "What are you doing? You're supposed to be here pulling this up. Quit fooling around up there." And I said, "I wasn't fooling around. I was talking to Mother, and don't, you know, it's not hurting you any. You're cool down there." And I just made some comment back. And he said, "Well, you stay on the job and do what you're supposed to be doing, or I'm going to come up there and kick your butt." Now that, I should have said, "Well, okay, I'll do better next time." But I said, "How many guys do you have down there that are going to come up and help you do that?" And he didn't even answer. I just heard him climbing up the side of the wall.
Because you had pulled the rope out by then.
Well,
Did you
it
have to
got
pull him
bad.
out?
Oh, I'd gone in and pulled the dirt up, yeah, and set it
So
aside.
you had to pull him out of
Yeah,
the hole.
and here he comes, and I can hear him, and I know what he's doing. Well, I could see down there, and here he's coming up. Now, each time you dug down, when you'd get down the 3 feet or so, we'd pour another ring of concrete around the thing. You just had a tin, piece of tin that was, you just rolled it up, but when you unroll it out here, then there's room enough between it and the wall to pour concrete down in there. And you pour it down in there and let it set. As soon as it's dry, why, it's just as good as if you'd put a big cement pipe down in there. And so each time you chased the water down, when you got down far enough that you had enough of this bare dirt showing, why, you'd get your form down there and pour concrete in there. Well, so that meant there was about a gap about this wide between each of the rings.
So you could climb it.
And so you could climb up it. And here he's coming up there, stepping on those. Well, when he gets up near the top, he says, I didn't bring any of those guys to help me because I didn't need them. I'm going to take care of it myself. So I turned around and I started running. And
Such the valiant guy you are.
And I run out to the front, and there's a barbed wire fence running along the front of our place. It was a little short one. I got over that fence and over a drainage ditch there that never ever had any water in it, onto the road, and he's right after me. Now, he has on a pair of the boots, irrigating boots. I just have on regular shoes. And I start running down the road, down the Harris Road towards Alma School Road, and he's right after me. Well, it became obvious to him after we'd run a couple hundred yards that there wasn't any way he was going to catch me with those boots on. And so he stopped and he said, all right, that's enough. Let's go on back and get the work done. And I said, you mean you're not going to whip me? And he said, well, not this time, but you better not do it again. So we went back and went on back to work, and I don't know, Mother was probably laughing hysterically about all this. But I knew Tom could clean my plow. There was never any doubt about that. Because I saw him fight guys that were a lot tougher than me. And Tom was not a fighter in the sense that he ever looked for a fight. I never saw him just bully anybody or do anything like that. But I did see him when somebody would call him a name or say something about Beverly. They said something about Beverly's crooked eye. I mean, they better be prepared to duck real fast because he turned around and flattened them. I saw him do that several times. I saw Billy Coleman call him some name, and I mean, before Billy knew what he said, he was flat on the ground, and Tom just laid him out.
But Morris Dees could call him a name.
I saw Billy Nichols flat on the ground, same thing. He called him some name, and Tom flattened him. But, so I didn't want to tangle with him if I didn't have to. I thought he'd take a joke when I said, how many friends do you have? Well, he didn't take it too well, and so I just took the easy way out.
Rand was saying you were thinking that if all he had to do is stop a second and take those boots off, he'd outrun
Well,
you.
he couldn't have run after me barefooted on that gravel road. That wasn't granite gravel. That
a little
was
bigger.
rock crushers that broke, and these rocks were this big and pointed sharp on the edges. They just crushed up boulders.
Coming off the
How
tires.
How deep was your well? How deep was that? Was
The
there any
well.
light down there?
Down the well?
Yeah, was there any light?
You didn't need a light. In the daytime, you got enough light down there to
But how deep?
see. Well, eventually we got down to 50 feet. But when we first dug that well,
How
it was only
wide?
13 feet deep.
How wide?
Just a culvert
Just,
where I'm big enough for him to get in it.
3 feet, probably 3 feet in diameter.
I want to be 50 feet down in a 3-foot wide hole.
Well, hey, that's got me into submarines. When the Commander Eddie said, does it bother you to be in close places? I said, I never slept by myself till I was married. Just kidding. Grandma always flinches when I said that.
No, your dad always said you had to shake the sheets to find me when in there. I was so
Anyway,
small.
no, I told him, I said, I grew up in a family of 9 children. I said, we lived in a one-room house for years. I said, crowds don't bother me. But I said, we had a well, hand-dug well that went down to 50 feet. And I'd stick my foot in that bucket, and my brother would lower me down there. I never even gave it a thought that it was any different than working right there in the yard. Dig down there until we could get enough water to add a length of pipe. See what we do. We just had some pieces of pipe about 10, 12 inches long. And whenever you dig, you take off the screen that you had on the bottom. And when you dig, then you take that screen off and you had a piece of pipe with a sleeve on it and you just screw it onto there and put the screen down here. And then get out of there, and you sometimes we wouldn't have to dig it in there more than once every year or two. But sometimes we were down there digging again in a week because the water level would go down. But anyway, when I explained that to him, and then I think something else, I told him that, that I was swam. I said, I think I could swim before I could walk. I said, I swam. I said, I used to just love to go under the roadway there with that culvert under there, go under there and stay underwater when I came out and make people think I was stuck in there. I said, I know that's not a very good prank to pull on people, but I wasn't afraid of the water. The water was my friend. And so after 30 minutes of him asking me all these questions, he said, I think you'd make a good submarine. Said, I'm going to recommend that we send you on up to New London to sub school. And that's what they did, and off I went.
So now let's see, Joe was in the Army.
Joe was in the Army,
You were in the
National
Navy.
Guard. Joe was in the National
Tom-
Guard.
Tom was
They
in-
mustered him
Tom was
into the-
Marine.
Tom was in the Marines, Roy was in the Air Force. What made you guys pick those branches of service?
Well, Roy, I don't know, Tom, they were going to form a Mormon battalion of Marines, and got quite a bit of publicity about that. And all these Mormon guys signed up. And Tom enlisted. He didn't wait for the draft notice. Of course, I really technically enlisted too because I'd already made the
Well, there was
contact with the
a
Navy.
Scott boy or something that went in with them at the same
Yeah.
time.
And a bunch of Mormon boys went in. But when they got into boot camp in San Diego, I guess the brethren in Salt Lake had some second thoughts on it. And they said, well, wait a minute, if we put all these guys into one company or into one battalion, and they caught in a situation and kills them all, so that's not
Shortage of priesthood holders and
Yeah.
that's not such a good idea. So they canceled the whole idea. So then Tom just volunteered for aerial gunnery school.
Okay, but he had already
Went to
been in the Marine
He
mindset.
had already been in the Marine Corps, thinking that he was going to go in that battalion, but then they canceled that.
Well, in Joe's case, he was in the Army National Guard,
Yeah.
Then was in
and
the
they
Bush.
activated his whole unit.
Which is what my dad was in. My dad was in the National Guard back in Kansas City. And when they they called his National Guard unit into service and sent them out to Utah, and that's where to guard the copper mills out there from saboteurs, because they really thought the Germans were going to try and sabotage those mills.
This is World War I.
World War I. And that's when he met my mother out there.
That's in the life
Joined the
story.
church.
It'll be on the CD that you get.
I remember
That's
that
chapter
story.
So when anybody tells me about President Bush, he never served in the military, just served in the National Guard, I kind of bristle just a little bit. And I tell them, hey, my dad was in the National Guard and served in the war in France. And there's a whole bunch of National Guardsmen that went to Korea, and a whole bunch more. Well, in fact, there were many National Guard units that went into World War II. I tell them my dad did that. My brother was in the National Guard. He fought the war in New Guinea and the Philippines. There were plenty of other National Guardsmen that were mustered in there. There were several National Guard units were in Korea and fought in that war. I said, don't give me this bunk about National Guard.
Well, who would do
These
that after
guys-
Clinton's draft dodging?
These guys
Bush's-
are more apt to get into the
The
war
movies
than
have
anybody
gone.
else is, because they're already trained. So with a very little additional training, they throw these guard units right into battle, where the other guys, they have to spend all their time learning manual of arms and these kind of things that the guardsmen already know all that stuff.
What's the next one, Scott?
Next one on here. I've got, this one I threw on. I remembered something about a gas leak when you were on a bus. Like a bus was in a car, a wreck,
Oh,
and
yeah,
there
It
was
was,
a car.
Fire
it
department.
was probably the first shift, or maybe the second shift, that I worked as a fireman. I had just got on the fire department. They'd sent me to number 6 fire station. I had on Levi's, I had on a t-shirt, because they didn't require us to get uniforms until we passed our probation. And so I never bought a pair of fireman's jeans. I had on Levi's, I had on a t-shirt, because they didn't require us to get uniforms until we passed our probation. And so I never bought a pair of fireman's jeans until I'd been on there 6 months and completed my probation. And then I bought some jeans. I just wore Levi's. But here I was, the driver, the first day I went there, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, July 1st, 1947, the driver pulled the truck out in the apron in front of the station and said to the other hosman and I, both of us starting that day, he says, let me show you now how to take a plug, is the term they use, take a plug. I'm going to show you how to pull that hose off, wrap it around the fire plug so it won't be jerked away when I drive the truck away. Get that cap off of there, get that thing unwound then and on there, and you got to do all that in 15 seconds or 20 seconds. And then we teach you how to do that. Now, there wasn't any drill tower, there wasn't any academy, nothing. We just went to work that day, knowing nothing about the fire department. And so we practiced out there. He took a 2x4, drove it in the ground in the lawn, nailed a coupling onto it. He had its extra coupling, nailed it onto that 2x4. That was our fire hydrant. We jump off. He just wouldn't even move in the truck. He'd just say, okay, I'm stopped. You jumped off, threw it around that 2x4, pulled a little hose off so you had enough to work with, got it back off of there, put it on that coupling. Well, if it wasn't that night, because I went to work at 4 o'clock, it was the next night that we get a fire call right out on Central Avenue. Now, we're on First Avenue, right here in Grant and First Avenue, down south of the tracks. This call is right straight to the same number on Central Avenue as we are on First Avenue, so we know we just got to go around the block. We pull around there, and what's happened is the 2 city buses are driving along there, and one stops and the other one runs into the back of him and punches a hole in the gas tank that was right there at the back. Now, that hole was probably as big as my little finger. So that gasoline in those tanks held like 80 gallons. That gasoline is just squirting out of there, just like out about this far. And they're pulled over to the curb. The one that pulled to the curb when he stopped, and that's when the other one ran into him. Well, the other one had backed back away, but here we are, pulled up here in the middle of the street with the fire truck, having just gone about 100 yards around the corner. And so people start congregating all around there. And so some dumbhead is standing there on the curb. The gasoline's right out there, he can practically reach it with his hand, pulls out a cigarette, sticks it in his mouth, and gets a match to light it. And I said, put that cigarette out, get out of here. But when I said that, the captain saw him, and boy, he just grabbed him and took him off the side and probably told him, how did you live this long and be this stupid? I don't know. I mean, it was so idiotic. There's this gasoline coming out, the fumes, and the gasoline's running down a storm drain, which makes fumes all the way around the block. I mean, if you set that off, it'd be blowing stuff up all down that pipe under the ground. But that was a kind of a scary situation. But, well, probably I didn't know enough to be scared. I hadn't had any experience. If that had been a year later, it probably scared the heck out of me.
Oh, you'd have probably hit the guy.
Because I did have something like that happen once when I was captain, and a car rolled over. Somebody had hit it broadside and it rolled over and upside down. And the gasoline's running out and some character comes out there and we're wetting it down and trying to figure out how we can shut that gas, plug that up. And some guy walks up there and puts a cigarette in. And I just shouted right in his face, "Get out of here, you stupid, can't you see what we're doing here? Get away from here." I thought, well, that wasn't a nice way to talk to a taxpayer. But on the other hand, if he'd have blown that thing up, it'd have taken all of us. But I have a better gasoline story than that one. Sometime later, I was captain, so it was within the last 4 years that I was on the department. Somebody out at a service station at 30, what was that, 32nd Street, I guess. And, well, 33rd, it wasn't right on 32nd. And Washington Street. There was a service station out there and they had this big gas tank above ground. A huge tank sticking up there, probably 12 or 13 feet in the air. And somebody had hit that with their car coming out of the station and ripped a little hole in the side of that huge tank. And here's that gasoline coming out of there. And fortunately, it was midnight. And we pulled into there, and here was this gasoline. Oh, no, he'd hit the, there was a spout on it, and he'd hit that and broke it off. So anyway, the stuff's coming out. And about as much as was coming out of that gas tank, only that there's thousands of gallons in this huge tank. And so we pull up there, and I said, now keep the truck back away from there, because we might get a spark or something from the engine that had set this stuff off, because you could tell when you drove up, you could see the stuff running, that don't get too close to it with the truck. So we walked in there, and we trying to figure what can we do to solve this problem, and I finally thought, well, let's plug that hole up. Now you got to get right in the middle of it. If it goes off or catches on fire, why, it's adios casus, but that's the only thing you can do. So we took one of the wiping rags, we had some clean, these orange colored wiping rags, and took that thing and got a piece of wood. I didn't want a piece of metal. And poked that thing just like I would have in the submarine if we'd just depth charge it and knocked a leak in us while we had all the stuff to plug those up. And I pushed that thing and finally plugged that up to where it stopped running. And then, of course, we got the service station man and said, now, how can you get that gas out of there? Because that's not going to last forever. It's going to soak that rag up. And so what he did was, this was ethyl in that tank, and he drained the whole thing down into his regular tank because it was low enough that it would hold all that was in there, his underground tank. So he drained it all down into there. And when he got it down low enough that it was below the cut, why then we weren't concerned anymore. That wasn't our responsibility. So we went back to the station and I reported in to the chief what was happening by radio, then went on into the station. The next morning, and I got off at 8 o'clock. We took the car down there and filled the tank with regular, only it was ethyl. But the guy knew that, I mean, it wasn't any secret. But I just pulled in there and said, fill it up with ethyl. And so he smiled and
We're really
filled it
splurging.
up. So he got it for the regular price. He got the ethyl gas. But with that much fuel, makes you nervous. And like you say, that first time, I was just brand new on the fire department. I didn't know enough to be scared. By the time this happened, I'd been on the fire department about 10, 11 years or so. I knew enough to be scared.
And we
Before
better,
I do a pause,
Well,
what?
Well, I want to hear the story about the Phoenix bath sign.
Oh, that's a good story.
The Phoenix bath sign,
The Phoenix.
baths. over our,
When you guys were renting the house.
hanging down our front porch.
It's a radio shop.
Massage and baths. Well, that was, they had a radio shop out in the front part. We lived there at 1013 West Jefferson when I first came home from the Navy. We actually lived there 2 years.
It was hard to find a place to rent, and so they had cut up these houses so they could rent part of them out.
Yeah.
Had a business in the front.
Yeah, this was a house on there, and they'd cut it in two, and the bathtub and that was in the front part, so they built a little shower on the back, so we could get in there to take a shower. And but anyway, Grandma, the lady that owned it, or the man that owned it, lived across the street with Cleone,
Married.
and so they
The
made
Griggs.
arrangements that I was coming home. I was already back in the States, but it took me 3 weeks after I got back to the States to actually get home. And so he rented it to her so that when I got home, we'd have a place. And it was there at 1013 West Jefferson. Well, there was a radio shop went in there. And he had a glass case out in front. I don't know if you remember this at all. Out in the front, on the street,
Like a marquee.
right off, just on the lawn, but just back of the sidewalk. This glass case up there and wood the rest of the way around. And he had signs painted on it, like radio services, things like this on there, stuff, advertisement of stuff he had inside. And inside the showcase, he had some tubes, some radio tubes and things like this. And probably burned out ones, but they were all right to show them out there. And so then he left and closed that business down, but he didn't take the case away, just left it out there with the signs on it. Now a massage outfit, baths, moves into the front there. Well, we were hearing all kinds of interesting things through the wall,
The walls were just
because there was a
thin.
door in there that went into that bathroom, and
Things that had little to do with
You could
massaging
hear.
and bathing.
you could hear everything through there.
Well, maybe.
It's not that far around the barn.
And we could hear guys in there taking a bath in there, and the woman's in there talking to them while they're bathing.
Or doing something.
Or whatever else they might be doing. And so anyway, we got tired of this because people would keep coming up to our door, knocking on the door and saying, "Is this where the baths are?" And we'd say, "No, it's that door right there." Because you came up on the same porch, but you went in that door and for them and in this door for us. No, that's where it is. Well, I got kind of tired of it and what we were hearing through the wall.
Well, and we had the water heater was in our side of the
Oh, yeah,
place.
yeah, the water,
So
just
he
one water.
turned off the water, so it wouldn't get hot.
Yeah, we shut off the water so that they couldn't get hot water into the bathtub.
That made the
and
conversations even more interesting.
And so anyway, we were just trying to irritate them because we wanted them to get out of
You
there.
were
We didn't
trying
think
to
that we
irritate
wanted
them.
want them
I hate
in our house, so to speak. Well, finally, I went out front,
And a very
This
strong
was the
person
clincher.
in Phoenix.
and we'd been trying to
Grown up
buy a
in Bryan,
refrigerator
became-
because we had an ice box in that place. We wanted to buy a refrigerator so that when we later moved to our own house, we'd have the refrigerator to take with us. And so we asked the guy has sold it, the Greeks sold it that rented it to us originally. And Eisenstein owns it. Eisenstein, it's the Irish family. The husband had been in World War I and had been gassed. They used mustard gas in World War I. And so his lungs were bad, and he for years his health had really been bad. And so we wanted to buy this refrigerator. Well, she said, "No way, because I pay the utilities
She
for
ran
these
that
apartments, and you're not gonna be using electricity to run that thing, and me have to pay for it." And I said, "Well, I'll pay you an extra $5 a month to cover the electricity that this uses." "No, not gonna do it." And so one day the husband's there when we're talking about this, and he just climbs all over her. "You cheapskate, here this man's they're trying to accumulate some furniture for their own place, and you stand here and argue with them, and he just really chewed her out. And she's telling him, you just shut up. I'm running the business. You don't do anything but just sit around, which is really all he could do with his health like it was.
Well, and remembering that you were 21 years old at this time.
Well, I was 21 probably by that time.
Not had any sense in his
But
head.
anyway, he's defending us and saying, let him buy it. It don't make that much difference, and let him accumulate some stuff. They're going to buy their own home. No, she wouldn't have any part of it. And yet, she didn't dislike that. Oh, and she always wanted us to pay extra rent.
And
There was a rent ceiling set by the government at that time to protect the veterans who were coming home and then having these people jack the rent up, double it and triple it. So they kept a ceiling on the rents. Whatever you had charged during this period of time, you couldn't charge any more than that in this period. Or if you got special permission, you might be able to raise the rent $5 or something like that, but not much. Well, she's saying, well, now these people back here, they pay me an extra $20 each month, just
Under the table,
yeah, under the she didn't use the term under the table, but that's what she meant. And this one over here, they pay me $15, but you don't pay me anything extra. You just pay me the $8 a week. Well, I said, that's all I have to pay you. The law says that that's what your rent is. Well, but other people are paying me extra. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to do it. Well, this created some friction there. And still, she hired me to take another little house to the back there. And I went in there and I divided that into 2 apartments.
They
Did
don't
all the
care, get
carpenter
onto your-
work, fixed that all up in there, fixed it nice so she could rent out 2 halves.
You're risque.
I did the lawn, I mowed the lawn, and so she paid me whenever I did those things. She even had me come down to their second-hand store there on East Van Buren and help them out there and paid me. So she didn't dislike me. She just, I don't know how you'd even describe it.
She hadn't
And
sat
so
there around
All
to eat.
business.
Even invited us over to her house to dinner. She fixed a nice dinner and had us come over there to Palm Lane and 3rd Street to dinner with her. But yet she just wouldn't let us buy a refrigerator. I mean, this is so crazy because some of the petty things she was all bent out of shape on, and other things, hey, that's fine.
She'd call us and say, they don't have any hot water. And I'd say, well, I'm sorry. No, I know Russ Jr. hasn't gotten and turned that. He never bothers that. Well, Russ Sr. had.
Well, so anyway, I finally hit on something that I thought might help solve the problem, and I quickly learned it only made it worse. But it got us out of there and got us into our own home,
Yeah.
because we were looking for
I
a
had
place to
ulcers.
buy, and I had saved some money while I was in the Navy. In fact, when I came home from the Navy, I hadn't even drawn any pay for probably a year, because I didn't need the money. All I needed was
He's
bars of
alluding
soap
to
once in a
story.
while,
He
and
doesn't want
what do you
to
spend
that.
money on a submarine in the middle
well,
of the
that's right.
Pacific Ocean?
So I just let my pay ride, and so I had $500-600, which was a lot of money then, accumulated in there.
It's a lot of money
And
now,
so-
I'll take it if someone wants to give me some.
Yeah. So anyway, I had some cans of
Year's
paint.
I better go
I had
find
some cans of white
candy
paint,
for you
and this
guys to keep you awake.
This display case out front was white, but with red lettering
No.
on it with all these little things they wanted to advertise. So I took the white paint and I went out there and I painted out certain letters in these words. I just painted out certain letters. So where it said services, I painted out the S-U-S-E-R. So it said vices. And I did that to several things that left the parts of the words on there. That this front bathhouse was all these things. Well, they went out and saw that, and they called her, the landlady, and they were really mad. And she called me and she says, "You're going to have to move out, or you're just causing too much trouble." And I said, "Well, all I did was tried to paint out those words out there. I didn't have enough white paint to paint the whole thing. And so I just painted out part of it. What's bothering them? Well, you painted the SCR out there and it says vices. Well, if there are no vices going on in here, why does anybody care? It's not hurting any. The word vices is not a bad word. And so she said, well, you're still going to have to get out. Well, at about that time, and this went on over a period of 2 or 3 weeks, well, then we found this house out on 24th Place. And the people wanted to sell it, and they had a mortgage on it. And so I looked at that, and the mortgage payment was $35 a month. And these people that we bought it from said they would take $25 a month on their equity in the house. We pay them $25. Well, I looked at that and I thought, I can afford $60 a month. So we made the deal. We didn't use the Veterans Administration, the GI Bill, or anything else. We just made the deal with them. Now that we had the deal made with them, I said to the landlady, well, all right, we've been thinking about this and we think we'll get out of here. But we will move if you will give us the range, the kitchen range here that's in the kitchen. Because she had a second-hand store and she sold all this kind of stuff. Refrigerators, stoves, everything out there. I said, give us that kitchen range and we'll get out. And so she said, okay, I'll do that. Well, the house we bought had a kerosene range in there. But it also had butane tank out in the back. And so I thought, just get this kerosene range out of here, get that gas range into here, hook it up to the butane. And so that's what I did. So we left and moved our stuff and got out. But I told her, I said, one of these days, somebody's going to get fed up with the way you treat them, and they're going to shoot you. I just said that. So they're going to shoot you. Somebody's going to get fed up with this. Because I said, you are really a selfish person. And by golly, if that didn't happen.
All right.
It was about 2 years later, and her husband shot her. He's the one that killed her. And they were there in the house. They were there in the house on Palm Lane at 3rd Street. And we heard this on the radio, that this man had shot his wife, but they didn't know what to do about it because there was no proof that he'd shot her. They couldn't find any bullet holes in her or anything.
Really?
And so they were about to conclude that she must have died of fright, that when he pulled the gun out and shot, that he missed her, but that she died of a heart attack. So and this was all in the paper, on the radio. So then the next day, they took her then, and took her to the, what do you call it, the
Mortuary.
well, the
Well, they bury
medical examiner.
they bury their people right away, the Jewish people, but
But
anyway.
they took her to the medical examiner and to make sure why she died. Well, what had happened was that when he went to shoot her, she went like this, and the bullet went right in here and into her heart. And when she fell and her arm came down, no blood came out of there at all. And in a superficial exam, they couldn't find a wound on her anyplace until they pulled her arm up like this. And when they pulled her arm back up like this, then they could see where the bullet had gone in there. But when her arm was down or out like this, they couldn't see anything. So it was a day or two before they came out that that's what had happened. Now the son, he's standing right there by her, and he says, I know Dad shot her because I saw him. Well, where'd the bullet go? It didn't hit her anyplace. But it had, right under her armpit. And I thought, well, I didn't mean to be a prophet here. And so, but said somebody's gonna shoot you, and it was Max.
Foretold her death.
So they sentenced him to, I don't know, 20 years or something in prison. You and I were walking downtown on Washington Street. It wasn't more than 2 or 3 months after they'd sentenced him, and we passed him on the sidewalk walking. He was a Mason, belonged to the Masonic Society. And those people have a way of getting their people out of trouble. And that's been a history, a long line of history, is Masons get their people out of trouble. But here we are walking down the sidewalk, and here's Max walks right past us, and he's supposed to be down there in the prison for 20 years. So I don't know how that was swung, but the fact that he was a Mason, I think they fixed it up.
Here's another story.
And I don't remember how long he lived, but
This is the last
but
career.
he really bad health.
Pause.
It can be real quick.
Yeah, that's not teaching.
Well,
10 pounds.
the one of them is the cigar on bus. Grandma pregnant. Is that
Well, that
right?
wasn't too long. That one is a very long story.
You want to take some of this?
Yeah, when Grandma was carrying Linda, and, see, well, right, yes, that was Linda, because Linda was born when we lived in that house in Jefferson, and Susan wasn't born till we were over at the other house that put it place. Grandma and I were on the streetcar, wasn't the bus, it was a streetcar. And we're riding down Washington Street to the library, and then we walked across the lawn, the library, over to our house where we rented there, Mrs. Eisenstein. Some guy, we on the streetcars, you had the operator up here, you had a seat that went sideways right along the windows, and then the rest of your seats went crossways. And we're sitting on this first crossways seat, Grandma and I, and it's probably 2 or 3 months, I guess, before Linda was born. And this guy is sitting on the side seat right there. And he pulls out a cigar and he lights it up. Now, there wasn't any law against it. So here he's sitting there smoking that cigar. And Grandma said to me, "This is making me sick."
Was this
I really
before
get
Dad was
sick
born, or was she?
to my stomach from that cigar smoke. And so I said to the guy, now remember, I'm still not all that old. I hadn't been out of the Navy all that long. I wasn't accustomed to people telling me, no, I won't do it, I don't care what you think. I just wasn't accustomed to that. So I said to him, would you please put out the cigar, you're making my wife ill. And he said, there's no law against smoking out here.
Didn't you lean to the driver and he just ignored you, didn't
So
he?
he turned to so I said, I didn't ask you if there was any law. I said, put that out, you're making my wife sick. He turns, taps the driver on the back, and he said, is there any law against me smoking on here? And the driver said, no. Well, that really churned me. I leaned forward on that seat and I said to him, I asked you to put that cigar out. Now you put that cigar out or I'm going to take it away from you and I'm going to shove it right down your throat. And he looked at me and he took that cigar and he put it out. And so we rode on down a little farther and then he got off the bus, and I guess he got off, then he could do what he wanted to, but didn't. But that's just what I said, I'm going to shove it right down your throat. The driver never intervened or said anything. So we got off when we got to our stop. But the day or two later, and see, I was, Nick Udall had been elected to the city council, and a day or two later I saw Nick downtown on the street. And I said to Nick, hey, and I knew him because we were in the 3rd Ward with him, I knew the family. And I said to him, I just about had to call you the other day to come and bail me out of jail. And he said, why? I told him, I said, I told this guy I was going to shove that cigar down his throat. And if he'd have kept smoking it, I would have done it. And I'd have been in jail, or I'd have been arrested for assault,
No
and you'd have
wonder
to
I
come get
ever
me
lived
out.
through all these things.
And he said, Nick said, you know, I've been thinking about that, about this smoking on these buses and streetcars. He said, we have a council meeting tomorrow. I'm gonna tell the other councilmen about, do you mind if I tell them exactly what you told me? I said, I'll come up there and tell them if you want me to. No, I said, I'll tell them. By golly, it wasn't 2 weeks later that we had an ordinance hearing, and within another 2 weeks, we had an ordinance saying no smoking on buses or streetcars within the city limits of Phoenix.
Yay, Grandpa!
They banned it, and of course, then it spread. It spread till now you can't smoke on any bus anywhere in the state of Arizona, and in fact, maybe not anywhere in the United States.
Well, there's probably every state has a law, though
Well,
there isn't a
there's
national
federal
law.
laws against it now.
Well,
Airlines and all sorts of things you can't smoke on there. But anyway, that's
You guys
That's
wonder
what
how
that
I ever
story
lived
was
through all of
about.
it.
and I was just young enough and out of the Navy short enough time, I would have got up and pushed that thing down his throat. I wasn't kidding or tried to, if he'd have closed his teeth.
These stories
all
are great,
over
but
his
man, I'd have
face.
loved to have been a fly on the wall.
Would have been great.
And I don't know what Grandma thought. She just sat there. She didn't offer any advice.
It's a wonder I didn't have bleeding ulcers.
She just sat there and let me solve the
Well, there
problem.
wasn't anything I could do. He was gonna talk about it, so.
But he quit smoking and we got an ordinance against it.
Not too bad. He probably
So-
didn't know that was his fault.
I'm glad it didn't name it
So
the
you
Irma
see,
law.
we have Megan's law
Yes.
and we have Russ Harris's law. They didn't name that.
Well, I remember a long time ago, you were telling me that you would, at the fire station, during the times that you weren't doing anything, you would sit out there and set your chair back and shoot the dove out in the
Oh,
field.
well, I was inside doing that.
Mhm.
Yeah, we would work there at 24th Street in Roosevelt, and the state hospital was down mostly on Van Buren. And
That's
they
what
had a
they should-
field then that ran clear back up to the back of the fire station. Then the city had got the state to just let them have that corner to put a fire station on. Otherwise, that was a wheat field in there. City had got the state to just let them have that corner to put a fire station on. Otherwise, that was a wheat field in there. And probably 20 acres or more there. Well, they'd harvest the wheat, but some of it fell on the ground, and the doves would walk into there and pick up the wheat out of the field there. So I was in the fire station. The back room was the dormitory. It was our dormitory where our bunks were around the wall where we slept. And the captain didn't have a special room. I slept right in there too when I was captain. But the windows on there opened out. You could unlock them and open them this way. And we had a ping pong table right in the middle of the floor there with the dorm, with the beds along the walls. So I'd take my rifle and I'd go over take it with me to work, and I shot 22 shorts, I think, is what I was shooting there. Not BB caps, but 22 shorts. And so I would open the window, put a chair up on the table, the ping pong table. Then I'd sit up there on that chair, and I'm from here to you, maybe from the window. I'm inside. I'm shooting out the window, and so when the pigeons would land, the doves would land in there, and I could get them within my sight, I'd shoot them. Now nobody heard the shot because I'm inside the building, so it's not any sound that went out was just going out towards the field there. It wasn't going towards houses over here. And I did that dozens of times while I worked there. Shoot those pigeons, doves. I shot pigeons later. Shoot those doves. And what I'd do then, I had a tomato can, the big tomato juice cans. And I'd get 3 or 4, and I'd put the gun in my locker, and I'd walk out, and I'd go walking around the field, just, carrying this can in my hand. And then every once in a while, I'd just kneel down and put that dove in the can, see? And then I'd stand up. I'd look like I'd just found a rock or something I was saving. And then I'd walk to the next one, and then I'd bend down and put it in the can. Well, then I'd take them inside, and the guys would, and I'd usually get 7 or 8. The guys would pick the feathers off of them, and George Cockerham was our cook, and he owned a Mexican restaurant, George's own life. But he still worked on the fire department. In fact, he'd buy a restaurant, build it up, sell it, and buy a bigger one. So he has a huge one now out there, where the road
Dreamy
goes.
Draw.
Dreamy Draw has a big restaurant out there, it makes lots of
His
money.
son's on the department.
But anyway, George loved to cook, and so we'd get these doves, and George would take them and clean them up real good and put them in a pan and make up some gravy and put over them and put them in the oven and bake them. And then we'd eat them for dinner that night, along with whatever else we brought.
Rand wanted you to tell the story of the dog food,
Of what?
the dog food.
Oh, yeah.
That's one Rand
But
asked
anyway,
you. Have we got time on
I
it?
killed lots of those doves, and we always ate them. We didn't just waste them. But we did that many times. And George just loved to fix them and cook them up different ways.
I was just
They're
amazed
really
that
too small to fry up like you do chicken.
Yeah.
But they go great if you make gravy. And
I was just amazed you were shooting them at 24th Street and Roosevelt with a 22. But
well, that's why where I was seated, see, I'm
Yeah,
shooting at the ground. I'm not shooting out this way. I'm shooting down. And so the bullets were going into the dirt in the field there. They weren't ricocheting off.
well, I'm not saying it wasn't safe. I'm just saying I can't believe you're shooting in city limits.
There weren't
Nobody
any
says
houses,
it,
there
nobody
weren't
says
any
it.
houses around.
No houses out that side at all. That field went way down a quarter of a mile. And then they had some office buildings down there, but no houses out that way. Well, and then the dog food, we would, Civil Air was my driver when I was captain. Now, he'd been a driver a long time, but I came in as a hostman, went to driver, went to captain. He was still a driver. But he was a smart guy. He owned a car lot out on 16th Street in Van Buren, sold cars out there. He owns a bunch of hogs down in South Phoenix that he raised and sold to the market. He made that money. But anyway, I don't know which one of us hit on this idea, but we liked corned beef hash. And corned beef hash comes in number 2 cans. And so we would buy it to eat there at the station at night when we fixed our meals while we'd eat it, or sometimes working days. Just cut it up, put it in the frying pan, fry it a little. It's already cooked, the can, but it was tasty. Well, one day we hit on the idea that we'd take the label off, and we'd take a label off of a dog food can, and we'd put it on there, and then when we had a new guy that came there to work, because we often had somebody off and they'd send us another man, why, you get him in the kitchen, and you pull this thing out with the dog food label on it, and you crank it open on the can opener, and you pour it out and slice it up, put it in the frying pan, and fry it a little bit and eat it. And these new guys, you're eating dog food? I mean, some of them really got upset. They didn't even want to eat their own food because it was dog food. And so we've done this to probably 10 different guys over 2 or 3 years. So one day I decided it's time to double cross Civil Air. So I got a can of dog food and a can of corned beef hash. And I took the label off the dog food and then just taped it right back on there again. Took it off, but taped it back on, which looked like I'd put that on the corned beef hash can. And you tape it so it's not conspicuous. We have this new guy, So I say, hey, Sybil, there, let's bug this guy about eating dog food. Oh, good, look at that. So now he goes in the kitchen. I get a hold of the guy, the new guy, and I say, hey, we've been pulling this gag for a long time, but today it's going to be on him. It's going to be on Sybil there. So I said, when we go in there, he's going to tell you, he's going to show you this dog food can that we always have corned beef hash in there, but this time it's really dog food. This is really the dog food can. And so I said, but I want you to act like, oh no, you're not going to eat that stuff. Act all upset. And I said, he'll go ahead and eat it. And so we go in there. And so Sybil there, oh, hey, boy, you know, they don't pay us a lot of money around here, so we can't eat steaks and that, but this dog food really is tasty. And he opens the can, and it looks a lot alike.
Yeah.
This Vet's. And he slices it up in the frying pan, he's frying it there. And this guy is doing a good act. He's saying, you really gonna eat that? Oh, I wouldn't eat that. Oh, Sybil there saying, oh, it's good. It's really good. He said, this fish. And I'm just standing there trying to keep him laughing. And he says, look, there's fish in it. So here's even some little fish bones in there. And I don't know what he thought he was looking at. But anyway, he gets it fried a little bit, puts it on his plate, cuts off a bite, puts it in his mouth, chews. Oh, he said, this is really good. And this kid, he's trying to keep him laughing too, because he knows it really is dog food. Well, we let him eat 2 or 3 bites of it, swallow it. And then I said, oh my golly, Sybil, I made a mistake. I put that label on the wrong can. I said, this really is dog food. And I said, look, here's some bones and here's some stuff. Well, I'll tell you, he said, oh no. So he started drinking water. And he had a steak there and he put it on and cooked it. And he's eating the piece of the steak before it's even cooked and drinking more water. And finally he just went into the back room and got in the bed and went to sleep so he wouldn't have to think about it. I don't know, I would have gone to the bathroom, stuck my finger down my throat and threw it up if it bothered me that much. But he didn't, he just went to sleep back there because it was bugging me. So, but that was the double cross. But we still stayed friends. We didn't become
Now,
enemies over that.
was he the one that, there was somebody, I've got something in the back of my head that you were even with somebody when you took the captain's exam or something, but they got the scores mixed up, or was that for your graduate work?
No, that was for my fire captain.
Captain's exam, was he the
I
one?
I took that test and I got a card in the mail from the Civil Service Board saying you're number 2 on the exam. Well, I thought number 2 was fine because I knew there were 4 openings for captain. So when I had number 2, that was fine. But then I get a call from City Hall and the gal says, we made a mistake on your card. Well, when she said that, I thought, you know, if you're number 2, there's really only one way you can go, and that's down. I probably am number 22 or 32. And so I said, well, what mistake did you make? She said, well, you're really number 1. You're not number 2. We got number 2 and 1 mixed up, and you're really number 1 on the test. And I said, well, I appreciate you calling me. That didn't make me the least bit unhappy. But of course, I would have still become captain immediately anyway, because they were promoted 4 guys. But JoJo Jones was the one that was second now. He got the card that said he was first. Then they corrected he's second, I was first. Jones had been on the fire department a lot longer than I had. And so I don't know, it may have upset him just a little bit to think this upstart had come along and beat him on the test. But he later became a battalion chief when I was teaching. I don't know. The department started teaching and JoJo had become a battalion chief. But yeah, that was it. But I had a guy went to work same day with me named Awe, A-W-E. And he'd been a pilot in World War II. And every other word was profane. That guy couldn't say good morning without having a curse word in between there someplace. And I got so sick and tired of that, and he was a big guy, tall and husky built. And I wasn't bad shape. I probably weighed 180, and I was 6'1". He was probably
And he was
6'2",
young.
6'2", and probably weighed 200 pounds more. But anyway, I just got fed up with listening to all that profanity. And so one day after I worked with him, and I worked half-time with him because the way the shifts worked, I worked with Higginbotham half the time, worked with him half the time, he just rotated constantly. And so I just said to him one day, Meredith, I am really getting sick and tired of this constant profanity that you're using. I said, I don't want you to talk to me and use that kind of language. If you can't use proper language, then don't talk to me at all. In fact, I don't even want you talking around me using that kind of language. I'm tired of it. And he looked at me, and if he'd have swung and smacked me in the jaw, I wouldn't have been surprised at all. Because the look he gave me, and then he just shook his head and walked away, didn't say anything. And a shift or two there, we didn't have any conversation. But then we kind of got back to regular conversation. But he didn't swear. And so then, a few week or two after that, I was out on the floor by the truck, and I went to go inside to the lounge area, and he was in there. It was payday, and they'd bring the checks to the stations. The guys would go to the own station to pick it up, because they did it to each of the stations, bring them down. And so if you were off duty, you still came there to pick up your check. Anyway, I opened the door to go in that room, and there's about 4 or 5 guys. I'd seen them come in, but I didn't know how many were still in there, sitting in the lounge and in the chairs, and Meredith is standing there saying something to him. And as I came through the door, he said, this does almost a slang word, probably damn or something like that. And as he did, he turned to look to see who came through the door, and he saw it was me, and he said, pardon me, Russ, shouldn't do that, or something to that effect, pardon me.
Not sarcastic.
No, just said it, just like I said it there, pardon me. And that kind of surprised me a little bit. I said, it's okay. Well, that guy curbed that swearing to where he just almost totally eliminated it. And he told me one time, years later, when I'd left the department, he had made captain after I did. He didn't make it ahead of me or even with me. He made it a little later. He was on that same list, and he made it probably a year after I did. But I saw him, and he came over to me just like Mormon brother and do. And he put his arm on my shoulder, and he said, you know, if you hadn't have told me to watch my language, I would have never made battalion chief. I might not even have made captain, he said, because he was later battalion chief. He said, I really appreciate you telling me to knock that off. And so you never really know what effect you're going to get out of these people. But that was his comment. And you were with me one time out at Metro Center. Christown. And he saw us and came over and put his arms around me. And then I saw him at a funeral probably a year and a half or 2 years ago. And when he saw me, he came and went in and sat by me and talked about those times. And
Held his hand and they skipped down the aisle together.
He picked up that language in the service, and it was hard to break that habit.
And because of that, they passed a law, and you can't cuss on city buses.
Well, we tried to get that.
That's what you get out.
We tried to get that in there. And I do that when I go in a restaurant. And they say, do you want smoking or no smoking? And I said, I want no smoking, and I don't want any cussing or spitting either. And Mom said, cut it out.
I just get so tired. You see somebody in the
No
line at the
cussing or
grocery
spitting.
store that has a cigarette or something, and they'd say, you're not gonna be as good looking as I am when you get my age if you keep up that smoking.
In fact, then I say, in fact, you probably won't even be alive to get my age. And I tell them that my graduating class from high school, not one single smoker is still alive. That when we had our 40th anniversary, there were only 2 smokers there. Whereas way back, when we had the 20th, there were a bunch of smokers, but they died off.
Both of
We
them were in
only had 2.
wheelchairs and on up.
And when we had the 50th, there were no smokers, because both of those had died. And so I tell them, no, you're too good looking. I tell the women, you're too pretty to do this to yourself. Why would you do this to yourself, as pretty as you are? You're going to be looking just like those ugly old women out there if you keep doing this. I have done that, I'll bet you, 60 or 70 times at least. And I have never had one single one of those women say, mind your own business, or nothing like that. All I ever hear from them is, I know you're right, and I know I shouldn't be doing this. And I'm trying to quit. And I'd say, well, then now's the time to do it, while you're still pretty and you stay pretty. Now, what woman's going to argue with me that she's not pretty?
Yeah.
She's going to say, I'm not pretty, shut up. When I tell them how pretty they are, hey, they don't argue with me a bit about that. But it's just interesting, and I've never had one of them say, mind your own business. And I've even said it to 4 or 5 of them sitting there together. And I'd say, you are all pretty ladies. Why are you doing this to yourself?
Isn't that sexual harassment?
Yeah. If you were I,
Well, I say it to some man. I had one down at Cigna that he's always standing out there when we go and he's out on his smoke break. And I went over to him and I said, you're a medical person here. You're doing x-rays and things on people. Why would you be doing this? Well, I'm trying to quit. And so I said, well, don't try, do it. And you'll be glad you did. But then it was probably 2 months later, and I went by and he's sitting out there still smoking. Well, he saw me and he turned away and hoped I didn't see him because he hadn't quit, and he knew he should have. If he didn't think he needed to quit, he wouldn't have turned away from me. He would just looked at me like, who cares what you think? But he hid his face, so I wouldn't know he was still smoking. But I think we need, if even one of these women quit smoking because of what I said, then it's worth it for all that times to do that. It's worth it.
So the put it out or I'm gonna shove it down your throat approach
Well,
works.
that was ahead. That was early.
That approach works, and the you're too pretty to be doing this to yourself works.
There's been an evolution of the technique as
Seems like
time
both
has gone on.
methodologies are pretty sound to me.
Yeah, I don't think I'd get very far with those women if I said put that out and shut it down. Besides, that guy on the streetcar wasn't nice looking, so I couldn't go that
You
route.
couldn't lie about it. Oh, what about the, whose cigarette did you load down at the
Oh,
fire
Russell
station?
DeWitt's. And he died from smoking. He died of lung cancer.
'Cause you blew his
As
face.
did Bob Scarlett. He was a Mormon.
cigarette?
Bob Scarlett was another Mormon that smoked himself to death and died. George Brown was another one. Kenny Boyle was another one. They had a bunch of Mormons on there smoking, and they're all dead. But anyway,
They
that,
told him he'd be smoking in not very many
Yeah.
years. He never drank any Postum or hot chocolate out of anything but a glass.
yeah,
Because if he put it in a cup, then they would
I think it was
think
coffee.
it might be something else.
Yeah.
And he
They
didn't
think it
want
was
them-
coffee. I was even over to San Antonio, Texas with a group of counselors, and they were having a party for them with the high mucky mugs. We had colonels and all kinds of people there. And here was let's see, vice admiral, anyway, 1-star admiral. and he had dolphins on. And so, boy, I got over to talk to
That
him.
meant
I
he
don't know what
was
he
a-
was doing there at San Antonio.
That meant he
Well, I
was a
didn't know
submariner.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dolphins means-
yeah, I was a submariner. And I figured out later, or heard what he was doing, the commander at the base was a good friend of his. And he was going somewhere across country, he just stopped to visit, so he just happened to be there that night. But anyway, I talked with him, and he knew Commander Cassidy, my skipper, and he knew a lot of the people. Now, this might just a lot of years ago, but he knew a lot of the people that I knew. And, but anyway, they were serving drinks there, alcoholic drinks. And so this young woman, she was a captain, Air Force captain, and she should have been in Hollywood in the movies. That was a pretty lady as you'll ever see anywhere. Beautiful lady. But she came over to me and she said, Mr. Harris, because we had name tags on, she said, you aren't drinking anything. Can I get you something to drink? And I said, I don't drink. And she said, well, how about a glass of 7-Up or something? And I said, well, I would drink some 7-Up, but I'd like it to be in a bottle. And she said, well, the only bottles we have are the 2-liter or whatever they were. And I said, well, that's fine. I don't really need to drink anything. I can drink some water over there. And so she said, well, let me see what I can do. And she left. And about, probably 7 or 8 minutes later, she came back and she'd gone somewhere and found one of the little bottles of 7-Up. And she brought it over to me and she said, I found this for you. And I said, well, that was sure nice of you. I really appreciate that. I said, I don't drink, and some of these people, if they saw me with a glass, even if it was 7-Up, they'd think I was drinking alcoholic beverage, and I don't do that, and I don't want to give that impression. She said, I'm glad you told me that, and I'm glad I found this for you. So, I mean, you never know what points you make with people like that when you have a chance to explain something to them. I didn't tell her I was a Mormon or whatever. I don't do that, and I don't want to give the impression that I do.
When we were on the plane coming home from Tonga, the waitress, their hostess came and asked what we wanted to drink, and I said, do you have any milk? And so she said, yes. Are you ill? Yes, by any chance? And we said yes, and so she said, so am I. Well, then she spent the rest of the trip, when she got her duties done, coming back, talking to us.
Came and would sit down
But
and
just
talk to us.
because I asked for a glass of milk. Yeah.
But that cigarette explosion, that was Russell DeWitt. We tried to get him to quit smoking, but his dad had smoked for years, worked for the railroad as officer, and had smoked. And so it didn't surprise us that he was doing it, and I know one of his brothers did, another brother I'm sure didn't. But anyway, we were working at number 4 station there where I was the tillerman on the ladder truck, and he put his cigarettes down on the table. Now, this was before they had all of them had the filters on the ends of them. So you used to just didn't have filters on the ends of them. You can't do this. Well, you might could, but anyway, this cigarette had no filters on it, and they were the king size. And he'd laid them on the table, and he'd gone outside to do something. I got one of the cigarettes out, went into the kitchen, got an ice pick, and drilled a hole in each end, and I had some lady fingers, little firecrackers, and I poked them down into there with the fuse out, and then whichever end, I didn't know which end he was going to put in his mouth, so I put one in each end with the fuse out, pushed a little bit of tobacco over the top of it, put it back in his pack. Well, he came back in, and just as chance would have it, it was the first one he pulled out of the pack. He pulled it out, stuck it in his mouth, and he lit it with the match. And he just put the match out and kind of leaned back, and that thing went off. And just like the shows we see the Three Stooges and stuff like that, when cigars blow up in the face, that's just the way it did. It just sprayed this end of the cigarette, just sprayed out. And some of the ashes fell down his lap, and he's doing this. And he says, "Who did this?" Well, I didn't tell him who did it. I didn't see any reason to do that. He's not my bishop. I don't have to confess. And I don't know that he ever knew who did it. And then he died.
Now he knows who did it.
And now he probably knows. Now he's here listening. But he divorced his wife, and one of their sons. Oh, he wasn't Russell's son.
No,
That was
he
by
was
her
by her.
marriage. But anyway, this DeWitt,
Colin DeWitt.
Colin
with
DeWitt,
Gilbert
that's
Fire.
fire chief out in Gilbert or Chandler,
Got in trouble for taking the firemen up to the,
at the fire, the big fire.
Oh,
in the
to
mountains.
protect his
Yeah.
house.
Yeah, to protect his place. So
cabin.
he's the one. Now, we haven't heard any more about that.
I think he just agreed, they suspended him for a little while, he agreed to pay back anything that
But he was on the Phoenix Fire Department, same as his dad had been. He became battalion chief, and then he retired, and then he took that job out there. But anyway, Russell DeWitt remarried later,
Carol.
but they never went to the temple because he kept smoking. He hadn't been to the temple with his other wife either. And so I got acquainted with his second wife after he died through a man in my ward who had moved over to the east side of town and had some problems, and she called me to talk to him about it because she's kind of a social one. Also, I had a man that had been excommunicated from the church over on the east side of town, and a good friend. And when they rebaptized him, we'd gone over there, and she was there to that, playing the piano and that. And so I knew her. Well, then I had occasion to talk with her about something else on the phone, and I told her, I said, "Did Russell ever tell you about the time that somebody put a firecracker in his cigarette?" And she said, "No, I never heard anything about that." And so I said, "Well, let me tell you." So I told her just what I'd done, and she is just